Maria Thompson was a woman who wore many hats: mother, nurse, provider, but none of them came easy. Life had been tough since her divorce 3 years ago. Her husband left when Liam, their son, was just 7 years old. Since then, Maria had taken on the role of both parents, working long hours at the hospital while ensuring that Liam grew up in a loving and stable environment. Despite the challenges, she always found a way to smile through it all. She believed in giving her best, no matter how hard things got. Liam, now 10, was a bright and curious boy with a heart full of kindness. He admired his mom more than anyone else in the world. To him, she was a superhero, strong, caring, and endlessly patient. But even superheroes need breaks sometimes, and Maria knew that too. After months of saving every penny from her paycheck, she finally managed to scrape together enough money for a small vacation. It wasn't anything fancy, a visit to see Liam's grandparents in another state, but it meant the world to them. For once, they could escape the daily grind and spend some quality time together as a family. The morning of their trip started early. The sun had barely risen when Maria woke up, packed the last few items into their suitcase, and gently shook Liam awake. "Rise and shine, champ," she said with a warm smile. "It's adventure day." Liam rubbed his eyes, still half asleep, but the mention of adventure perked him right up. They shared a quick breakfast before heading to the airport, excitement buzzing between them like static electricity. When they arrived at the bustling terminal, Maria felt a mix of emotions: nervousness about flying, she wasn't the biggest fan of planes, and pure joy at the thought of seeing her parents again. The airport was alive with activity, families rushing to catch their flights, travelers sipping coffee at cafes, and announcements echoing over the intercom. Maria held Liam's hand tightly as they navigated through the crowd, making sure they stayed close. Things seemed to be going smoothly until they reached the security checkpoint. Maria fumbled through her bag, searching for their boarding passes. She remembered printing them out the night before, but now they were nowhere to be found. Panic began to creep in as she rifled through every pocket and compartment. Liam watched silently, sensing his mom's growing frustration. "Ma'am, you're holding up the line," came a sharp voice behind her. Maria turned to see a tall man in an airport uniform glaring at her. His name tag read Greg. He tapped his foot impatiently, clearly annoyed. "If you don't have your boarding pass, maybe you shouldn't be here wasting everyone's time." Maria swallowed hard, trying to remain calm. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I know I printed it out. Let me just check one more time." But Greg wasn't interested in waiting. He raised his voice, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "You obviously didn't prepare properly. Do you even know what you're doing? Traveling alone with a kid must be so irresponsible." The words hit Maria like a punch to the gut. She froze, feeling the weight of his judgment pressing down on her. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back, refusing to let this stranger see her cry. Around them, people stared uncomfortably, unsure whether to intervene or look away. Some whispered among themselves, shaking their heads disapprovingly, not at Greg, but at Maria. Liam stood beside her, gripping her hand tighter. He wanted to say something, to defend his mom, but he didn't know what to do. All he could think was that this man was wrong. So very wrong. His mom worked harder than anyone he knew. She deserved respect, not ridicule. Yet there was nothing he could do in that moment except stand by her side and hope it would end soon. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Maria remembered she had saved a digital copy of the boarding pass on her phone. With trembling fingers, she pulled it up and showed it to Greg. He snatched it from her hands, barely glancing at it before waving her through. "Next time, be more organized," he muttered under his breath as she passed. Maria hurried forward, pulling Liam along with her. Once they were safely past the checkpoint, she stopped and took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, and her heart ached with shame. She hated feeling powerless, especially in front of her son. But she also knew they couldn't dwell on this. They had a flight to catch, and she refused to let one rude man ruin their entire trip. As they walked toward their gate, Liam glanced back at the security area where Greg stood, arms crossed, barking orders at other passengers. There was fire in Liam's chest, a fierce determination to make things right. He may have been only 10 years old, but he understood fairness. And what had happened to his mom wasn't fair. Not at all. Little did Maria know, her brave little boy was already planning something that would change everything. For her, for Greg, and for countless others who might find themselves in similar situations someday. The humiliation Maria endured at the security checkpoint lingered like a shadow over her and Liam as they made their way through the busy airport. Every step felt heavier than the last, and Maria couldn't shake the feeling that everyone around them was watching, judging, or whispering about what had just happened. Her face burned with embarrassment, and though she tried to put on a brave front for Liam's sake, the tears threatening to spill betrayed how deeply Greg's words had wounded her. Greg's voice still echoed in her mind. "Do you even know what you're doing? Traveling alone with a kid must be so irresponsible." The accusation stung not because it was true. Maria prided herself on being a good mother, but because it came from someone who didn't know anything about her life. He hadn't seen her working double shifts at the hospital, sacrificing sleep and personal time to ensure Liam had everything he needed. He hadn't witnessed her late-night struggles to balance bills, homework help, and grocery shopping. All he saw was a moment of disorganization, and instead of offering assistance or patience, he chose to tear her down in front of strangers. Liam walked beside her, his small hand gripping hers tightly. His usual cheerful demeanor was replaced by a quiet intensity. He kept glancing up at his mom, searching her face for signs of how she was holding up. Though he was only 10, Liam understood more than most kids his age. He knew his mom worked hard every single day to give him the best life possible. Seeing her treated so unfairly filled him with a mix of anger and sadness. It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. As they approached their gate, Maria forced herself to focus on the positives. "We're almost there," she said softly, attempting a smile for Liam's benefit. "Just a little while longer and we'll be on the plane." But her voice lacked its usual warmth, and Liam could tell she was putting on an act. He nodded silently, unsure of what to say. What could he say? There were no magic words that could erase what had happened. Sitting down near the gate, Maria pulled out her phone to distract herself. She scrolled aimlessly through emails and social media, trying to block out the memory of Greg's sneering face. Liam, meanwhile, stared off into the distance, lost in thought. His mind raced with questions. Why had that man been so mean? Didn't he understand that mistakes happen to everyone? And most importantly, why hadn't anyone stepped in to defend his mom? Passengers continued to flow past them, some chatting animatedly, others scrolling on their phones or reading books. A few glanced curiously at Maria and Liam, perhaps having overheard the earlier confrontation. One woman sitting nearby gave Maria a sympathetic look and offered a small nod, as if to silently acknowledge the unfairness of the situation. Maria managed a weak smile in return, but quickly looked away, unwilling to meet anyone's gaze for too long. Time seemed to drag as they waited for boarding to begin. The minutes ticked by slowly, each one amplifying Maria's discomfort. Finally, the announcement came. Now boarding rows 20 through 30. Their row was called shortly after, and Maria stood up, grateful for the chance to move forward. As they joined the line to board the plane, Liam noticed his mom's shoulders slump, slightly under the weight of her emotions. She was trying so hard to hold it together, but he could see the cracks forming. Once on board, they found their seats, a window seat for Liam and the middle seat for Maria. The hum of the engines provided a soothing background noise as passengers settled in. Maria busied herself helping Liam buckle his seatbelt and stowing their carry-on bag overhead. Keeping her hands occupied helped keep her mind off the incident, at least for a moment. But Liam wasn't ready to let it go. As the plane taxied down the runway, he leaned closer to his mom and whispered, "Mom, are you okay?" His voice was soft, full of concern. Maria hesitated before answering, unsure of how much to share. She didn't want to burden him with her feelings, especially since he was just a child. But she also knew Liam well enough to realize he wouldn't stop asking until she gave him an honest answer. "I'm fine, sweetheart," she said finally, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "It's just, sometimes people can be unkind. That doesn't mean we should let it ruin our day, though. We're going to have fun visiting Grandma and Grandpa, right?" Liam nodded, but his expression remained serious. He wanted to believe her, to trust that everything would be okay. Yet, deep down he couldn't shake the image of his mom standing there, humiliated in front of everyone. Something inside him stirred, a desire to fix things, to make sure no one ever treated her that way again. But how? What could a 10-year-old boy possibly do to stand up against an adult like Greg? For the rest of the flight, Liam sat quietly, staring out the window at the clouds drifting below. His mind buzzed with ideas, none of which seemed realistic. Still, he refused to give up. If adults weren't going to hold people like Greg accountable, then maybe it was up to kids like him to step in and make a difference. After all, he reasoned, fairness shouldn't have an age limit. Maria, meanwhile, tried to relax and enjoy the view. She watched Liam out of the corner of her eye, noting the determined set of his jaw. Whatever he was thinking about, it clearly mattered to him. She wished she could take away the weight of the world from his shoulders, but part of her admired his resilience. Even at such a young age, he possessed a strength that reminded her of herself when she was growing up. By the time the plane landed, Maria felt marginally better. The distance between her and the airport and Greg helped dull the sharp edges of her pain. Still, she couldn't deny that the experience had left a mark. Public shaming was never easy to recover from, especially when it came without warning or justification. As they collected their bags and exited the plane, Maria resolved to leave the incident behind her and focus on the joy of reuniting with her parents. What she didn't realize yet was that Liam already had a plan brewing in his head. While Maria focused on moving forward, her son was preparing to take action, to ensure that Greg's behavior didn't go unnoticed or unpunished. For now, though, Maria remained oblivious to his intentions. All she cared about was getting through the next few days and making memories with Liam that would outweigh the negativity of the past. Unbeknownst to her, Liam's determination would soon lead to something extraordinary, not just for her, but for countless others who might find themselves facing similar mistreatment in the future. By the time Maria and Liam arrived at her parents' house, the exhaustion of travel had settled in. The warm embrace of Maria's mom and dad provided some comfort, but Maria couldn't completely shake the lingering feelings of shame from the airport incident. She tried to push it aside, focusing instead on the joy of being reunited with her family. Her parents, always full of love and energy, greeted Liam with open arms, showering him with hugs and questions about school, friends, and his latest hobbies. For a while, Maria allowed herself to relax. Her dad cracked jokes that made everyone laugh, and her mom bustled around the kitchen preparing a feast. The aroma of home-cooked food filled the air, and for a brief moment, Maria felt like she was back in a simpler time, when life wasn't weighed down by responsibilities or judgmental strangers. But even as she laughed along with her family, part of her mind kept drifting back to Greg's harsh words. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't fully escape their sting. Liam, however, wasn't ready to let the matter drop. While Maria chatted with her parents in the living room, he excused himself quietly and slipped away to his grandparents' guest bedroom. There he pulled out his tablet, a gift from Maria last Christmas, and opened a notes app. His fingers hovered over the screen for a moment as he gathered his thoughts. Then, with determination etched across his young face, he began typing. He started by describing what happened at the airport, how his mom had accidentally misplaced her boarding pass, how Greg had yelled at her in front of everyone, and how unfair it all felt. He wrote about how much his mom worked, how tired she often looked after long shifts at the hospital, and how proud he was of everything she did for him. As he typed, tears welled up in his eyes, not because he was sad, but because he felt so frustrated. Why should someone treat his mom like that? Why didn't anyone stop Greg or tell him he was wrong? Once he finished writing, Liam read through his letter several times, making sure every word conveyed exactly what he wanted to say. Satisfied with his work, he decided to take the next step. He knew just complaining wouldn't be enough. He needed to do something concrete. So, he turned to the internet and began searching for ways to report bad behavior at airports. After clicking through various websites and articles, he stumbled upon a piece of information that gave him hope: the direct contact number for the CEO of the airline company that operated the airport where the incident occurred. Liam stared at the phone number displayed on his screen, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Could he really call the CEO? What would he even say? Would they listen to a 10-year-old boy? Doubts swirled in his mind, but he quickly pushed them aside. If adults weren't going to stand up for his mom, then it was up to him. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed his phone charger and headed back downstairs. When he returned to the living room, Maria glanced up from her conversation with her parents. "Hey, champ," she said with a smile. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, I'm good," Liam replied casually, holding up his tablet. "Can I borrow Grandpa's phone real quick? My battery's almost dead." Maria nodded without suspicion. "Sure thing, just ask him nicely." Liam approached his grandfather, who was reclined in his favorite armchair watching the news. "Grandpa, can I use your phone for a minute?" he asked politely. "Mine needs charging." "Of course, buddy," his grandpa said, handing over the device. "What do you need it for?" "I just want to check something online," Liam replied smoothly, avoiding specifics. His grandpa shrugged and went back to his show, none the wiser. With the phone now in hand, Liam retreated to a quiet corner of the house. He sat cross-legged on the floor, staring at the digits he'd scribbled onto a scrap of paper. This was it, the moment of truth. Summoning every ounce of courage he possessed, he dialed the number and pressed the phone to his ear. The ringing tone seemed to stretch on forever. Each second felt like an eternity, as Liam braced himself for what might come next. Finally, after 4 rings, a voice answered on the other end. "Hello, this is Mr. Harris speaking. How may I assist you today?" Liam froze for a split second, surprised to hear the actual CEO pick up the call. He hadn't expected that. Gathering his composure, he cleared his throat and spoke as confidently as he could. "Hi, my name is Liam Thompson. I'm calling because something happened at your airport yesterday and I think you should know about it." There was a pause on the other end before Mr. Harris responded. "Go ahead, Liam. Tell me what happened." Taking a deep breath, Liam launched into his story. He explained everything: how his mom had been humiliated by an employee named Greg, how the man had shouted at her in front of everyone, and how it made her feel small and unimportant. He described how hard his mom worked and emphasized that she didn't deserve to be treated that way. Throughout his explanation, Mr. Harris listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When Liam finished, there was a brief silence. Then, Mr. Harris spoke again, his tone serious but kind. "Thank you for sharing this with me, Liam. I'm very sorry to hear about your experience. That kind of behavior is unacceptable, and I assure you we will address it immediately. Is there anything else you'd like to add?" Liam hesitated for a moment, then added, "I just want my mom to get an apology, and I hope no one else has to go through what she did." Mr. Harris promised to look into the matter personally, and thanked Liam for having the courage to speak up. By the time the call ended, Liam felt a surge of pride mixed with relief. For the first time since the incident, he believed something positive might come out of it. Unaware of what had transpired, Maria continued chatting with her parents, oblivious to the fact that her son had just taken a bold step toward justice. Meanwhile, Liam tucked the phone back into his pocket and returned to the living room, a secret smile playing on his lips. Whatever happened next, he knew he'd done the right thing, for his mom, for himself, and for anyone else who might face similar treatment in the future. The next morning, Maria woke up feeling lighter than she had in days. The warmth of her childhood home, combined with the comfort of being surrounded by family, had done wonders for her mood. She helped her mom prepare breakfast while Liam played outside with his grandpa, tossing a baseball back and forth in the crisp autumn air. For the first time since the airport incident, Maria allowed herself to truly relax. The memory of Greg's harsh words still lingered somewhere in the back of her mind, but it no longer felt as heavy or consuming. After breakfast, Maria decided to check her emails on her phone. As she scrolled through the usual mix of work notifications and spam messages, one email caught her eye. The subject line read, "A message from our CEO." Frowning slightly, Maria opened the email, unsure of what to expect. What she found inside left her stunned. The message was brief but heartfelt. It began with an apology, not just a generic, "We're sorry," but a genuine expression of regret for the way she had been treated at the airport. The CEO, Mr. Harris, explained that he had received a call from someone reporting the incident and promised that appropriate action would be taken against the staff member responsible. He also extended an invitation for Maria to reach out personally if she wanted to discuss the matter further. At the end of the email, there was an additional note: complimentary round-trip tickets for Maria and Liam to use any time within the next year. Maria stared at the screen, her heart racing. Who could have reported the incident? She hadn't told anyone except her parents about what happened, and they wouldn't have gone directly to the CEO. Her mind raced through possibilities, but nothing made sense. Confused and curious, she set her phone down and walked outside to find Liam. He was sitting on the porch steps sketching something in a notebook. When he heard her approach, he glanced up with an innocent smile. "Hey, Mom," he said cheerfully. "What's up?" Maria sat down beside him, her eyes narrowing playfully. "I think you know exactly what's up," she said, holding up her phone so he could see the email. "Care to explain this?" Liam's cheeks flushed pink, but he didn't deny anything. Instead, he grinned sheepishly and shrugged. "I called the CEO yesterday," he admitted. "I thought someone needed to tell him what happened." Maria blinked, momentarily speechless. "You... what?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "You called the CEO?" "Yeah," Liam replied, his tone matter of fact. "I looked up his number online and talked to him. He said they'd fix it." For a moment, Maria simply stared at her son, her mind struggling to process what he had done. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face, a mixture of pride, amazement, and sheer gratitude. "Liam, that's incredible," she said softly, pulling him into a tight hug. "I can't believe you did that for me." "Well, somebody had to," Liam said, hugging her back. "That guy was really mean to you, and it wasn't fair. You work so hard, Mom. You deserve better than that." Tears welled up in Maria's eyes as she held her son close. In that moment, she realized just how much Liam had grown, not just physically but emotionally. Despite his young age, he had shown remarkable courage and empathy. Most adults wouldn't have had the guts to pick up the phone and confront authority figures, let alone a 10-year-old boy. Yet here was Liam, proving once again that kindness and bravery knew no age limits. Overwhelmed with emotion, Maria pulled back slightly to look at him. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I did to deserve a kid like you, but I'm so proud of you." Liam beamed at the compliment, though he quickly shrugged it off with typical boyish modesty. "It was no big deal," he said, though the sparkle in his eyes betrayed how proud he felt of himself too. Later that afternoon, Maria called Mr. Harris to thank him personally for his response. During their conversation, she learned more details about the steps the airline intended to take. Greg, the staff member who had berated her, had already been suspended pending an investigation. Additionally, the company planned to implement new training programs focused on improving customer service and fostering a culture of respect among employees. Mr. Harris assured Maria that her experience would serve as a catalyst for positive change throughout the organization. When the call ended, Maria felt a renewed sense of hope. What had started as a humiliating and painful experience had transformed into something far greater. Thanks to Liam's actions, not only had justice been served for her, but the incident had sparked meaningful discussions about accountability and compassion within the airline industry. That evening, Maria shared the update with her parents during dinner. They listened intently, their expressions shifting from shock to admiration as she recounted the events leading up to the CEO's intervention. "I always knew Liam was special," her dad said with a chuckle, ruffling his grandson's hair affectionately. "But this takes the cake." Her mom nodded in agreement, her eyes shining with pride. "You've raised an amazing young man, Maria," she said warmly. "He's going to do great things in this world." As the night wore on, the family gathered in the living room to watch a movie together. Liam curled up next to Maria on the couch, resting his head on her shoulder. Though neither of them said it aloud, both mother and son felt a deep sense of connection, a bond strengthened by the challenges they had faced and overcome together. For Maria, the entire ordeal served as a powerful reminder of two things. First, that even in moments of vulnerability there is strength to be found. And second, that sometimes the smallest voices can make the biggest impact. Watching Liam drift off to sleep, she couldn't help but marvel at the courage and resilience he had shown. He wasn't just her son, he was her hero. And as she tucked him into bed later that night, Maria whispered softly, "You changed everything today, kiddo. Thank you for standing up for us." Liam murmured something incoherent in his half-asleep state, but Maria didn't need a verbal response. She already knew what mattered most, that her son had taught her and countless others that when life throws obstacles your way, sometimes all it takes is one brave act to turn things around. The days that followed Maria and Liam's vacation were filled with a quiet sense of triumph. The incident at the airport no longer loomed over them like a dark cloud. Instead, it became a story of resilience and justice, a testament to what could happen when someone stood up for what was right. Back home, life gradually returned to its usual rhythm. Maria resumed her shifts at the hospital, and Liam went back to school, where math tests and soccer practice took center stage once again. But the memory of their trip and everything that had unfolded remained fresh in both their minds. At the airport, however, things were far from ordinary. News of Greg's suspension spread quickly among the staff, sparking conversations about professionalism and empathy. Many employees expressed shock that such an incident had occurred under their watch. Others admitted they'd noticed Greg's abrasive behavior before but hadn't known how to address it. The CEO's decision to take immediate action sent a clear message: mistreating customers, or anyone for that matter, would not be tolerated. In response, the airline launched a series of initiatives aimed at improving workplace culture. Sensitivity training sessions were organized for all employees, focusing on effective communication, conflict resolution, and the importance of treating every passenger with dignity. Posters featuring motivational quotes about kindness and respect began appearing throughout the terminals, serving as constant reminders of the values the company now prioritized. Some staff members even formed committees to brainstorm additional ways to enhance customer service, ensuring that incidents like the one involving Maria and Liam would never happen again. For Greg, the consequences of his actions proved to be more than just professional. Suspended without pay and required to complete mandatory counseling, he found himself reflecting deeply on his behavior. During one particularly candid session with a counselor, he admitted that he often let stress get the better of him, leading to outbursts like the one directed at Maria. "I didn't think about how my words might affect someone," he confessed. "All I saw was a delay, a disruption to my routine. I forgot there are people behind those delays, people with lives and feelings." Though Greg's apology came too late to undo the harm he caused, it marked the beginning of a personal transformation. Determined to make amends, he vowed to approach his job differently moving forward. When he eventually returned to work months later, colleagues noticed a change in his demeanor. He was calmer, more patient, and genuinely seemed to care about helping passengers rather than rushing them through security. It wasn't perfect redemption, but it was progress. And sometimes, progress is enough. Meanwhile, Maria continued to reflect on the impact of Liam's bravery. She couldn't help but share their story with friends, co-workers, and even strangers she met during her daily routines. Each time she recounted the events, From Greg's harsh words to Liam's bold phone call, the reaction was always the same: awe and admiration. People marveled at the courage of a 10-year-old boy who refused to stay silent when faced with injustice. Parents especially resonated with Maria's pride, imagining how they would feel if their own children acted with such conviction and compassion. One afternoon, while shopping at the local grocery store, Maria bumped into Sarah, a fellow nurse, from the hospital. They exchanged pleasantries before Sarah asked how her vacation had gone. Maria hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to dive into the full story, but something about Sarah's friendly smile encouraged her to open up. As she recounted the details, Sarah listened intently, occasionally shaking her head in disbelief or nodding in agreement. "That's incredible," Sarah said when Maria finished. "Liam sounds like quite the little advocate. You must be so proud." "I am," Maria replied, smiling warmly. "But honestly, I'm also inspired. Sometimes we forget how much power our voices have, no matter our age. Liam reminded me of that." Word of their story spread beyond casual conversations. A coworker suggested submitting an article to the hospital newsletter, highlighting the lessons Maria and Liam had learned. At first, Maria hesitated, feeling uncomfortable about putting herself in the spotlight. But after discussing it with Liam, who enthusiastically supported the idea, she agreed. The article, titled "Standing Up for What's Right: Lessons from My 10-Year-Old Hero," struck a chord with readers. Within days, Maria received emails and messages from colleagues expressing gratitude for sharing her experience. Some shared their own stories of standing up against unfair treatment, while others thanked her for reminding them of the importance of speaking out, even when it feels daunting. As weeks turned into months, Maria noticed subtle changes in her community. Conversations shifted toward themes of accountability and advocacy. Parents encouraged their kids to stand up for themselves and others, using Liam's actions as an example. Teachers incorporated discussions about fairness and empathy into classroom lessons, citing real-life examples like Maria and Liam's story. Even local businesses began emphasizing customer care, inspired by the ripple effect of one small act of courage. For Liam, life carried on much as it always had. Schoolwork, sports practices, and playdates filled his schedule, leaving little room for dwelling on past achievements. Still, he couldn't deny the sense of accomplishment he felt whenever someone mentioned his name in connection with the airport incident. His classmates teased him good-naturedly, calling him the CEO caller, and his teacher praised him during a class discussion about heroes. "Heroes don't always wear capes," she told the students. "Sometimes they're brave enough to pick up the phone and speak their truth." Despite the newfound attention, Liam remained humble. To him, what he had done wasn't extraordinary. It was simply the right thing to do. Yet deep down, he felt a quiet pride knowing that his actions had made a difference, not just for his mom, but for countless others who might now benefit from improved policies at the airport. Maria, too, experienced a renewed sense of purpose. She realized that her role as a mother extended beyond providing for Liam's basic needs. It included modeling strength, resilience, and integrity. Boinky. Witnessing her son's determination, she had been reminded of her own capacity to face challenges head-on, whether navigating the demands of her job or advocating for better conditions at the hospital. Maria approached each day with renewed confidence. On a crisp Saturday morning several months later, Maria and Liam decided to use the complimentary tickets they had received from the airline. Their destination? A weekend getaway to a cozy cabin nestled in the mountains. As they prepared to board their flight, Maria couldn't help but notice the changes at the airport. Staff members greeted passengers with warm smiles, offering assistance whenever needed. Signs promoting kindness adorned the walls, creating an atmosphere of inclusivity and respect. When they reached security, Maria braced herself, half expecting another stressful encounter. But this time the process went smoothly. The officer checking their documents introduced himself by name, thanked them for flying with the airline, and wished them a pleasant journey. Maria exchanged a glance with Liam, who grinned knowingly. "See," he whispered, "things are different now. Indeed they were. What had once been a source of anxiety for Maria had transformed into a symbol of hope, a reminder that change was possible when people spoke up and took action. As the plane soared above the clouds, carrying them toward adventure, Maria leaned back in her seat and exhaled deeply. For the first time in years, she felt truly at peace. Beside her, Liam stared out the window, watching the world shrink below them. Though he appeared lost in thought, Maria knew exactly what he was thinking about. Earlier that morning, he had asked her a question that lingered in her mind. "Do you think other kids will try to do big things like I did?" She had smiled and nodded. "Absolutely," she had replied. "Because of you, they'll know it's okay to try." Now, as the hum of the engines filled the cabin, Maria silently echoed those words. Yes, because of Liam, others would know it was okay to stand up, to speak out, and to believe in the power of their voices. And maybe, just maybe, those voices would continue to spark change, one courageous act at a time. The weekend getaway to the mountains turned out to be exactly what Maria and Liam needed. A chance to recharge, reflect, and create new memories far removed from the stress of daily life. The cabin they stayed in was nestled deep within a forest, surrounded by towering trees that seemed to stretch endlessly toward the sky. A gentle stream babbled nearby, its soothing sound blending with the crisp mountain air. It was peaceful in a way that neither Maria nor Liam had experienced in a long time. On their first morning there, they woke up early to watch the sunrise together. Wrapped in blankets, they sat on the porch sipping hot cocoa as the horizon transformed into shades of orange and pink. For a while, neither of them spoke. They simply enjoyed the quiet beauty around them, letting the serenity wash away any lingering tension from the past. But as the day unfolded, conversations naturally drifted back to the events surrounding their last trip, the airport incident, Greg's harsh words, and Liam's bold phone call. While these topics could have brought sadness or frustration, they now felt like chapters in a larger story, one marked by resilience, courage, and growth. Maria found herself marveling at how much had changed since that fateful day. She wasn't just talking about the improvements at the airport or the lessons learned by Greg. She was referring to something deeper, a shift in perspective, both for herself and for those around her. That evening, after dinner, Maria pulled out a journal she'd brought along. She flipped through its blank pages thoughtfully before turning to Liam. "You know," she said, "I've been thinking about everything we've been through lately, and I think it's important to write some of it down." Liam tilted his head curiously. "What do you mean?" "Well," Maria explained, settling onto the couch beside him, "stories like ours can teach people things about standing up for yourself, about kindness, about believing in your ability to make a difference. Maybe someday someone will read this and feel inspired to take action in their own life." Liam grinned, clearly liking the idea. "So we're writing a book?" Maria laughed softly. "Not exactly, but maybe notes, lessons, something to remind us and others that even when things seem impossible, change is always possible if you're willing to try." Over the next hour, mother and son collaborated on filling the journal. Maria wrote about the importance of speaking up, even when it feels scary. She reflected on how Liam's bravery had reminded her of her own strength and encouraged her to keep pushing forward despite challenges. Liam chimed in with his thoughts too, scribbling short sentences about fairness, teamwork, and never giving up. Together, they created a collection of reflections that captured the essence of their journey. By the time they finished, the journal was filled with heartfelt entries, a mix of wisdom, humor, and hope. As Maria closed it and placed it carefully on the coffee table, she felt a sense of accomplishment. This wasn't just a record of what had happened, it was a testament to the power of perseverance and love. When they returned home, Maria decided to share parts of the journal with a wider audience. With Liam's permission, she posted excerpts online, sharing snippets of their story along with key lessons they had learned. To her surprise, the posts quickly gained traction. Friends, acquaintances, and even strangers began commenting, sharing their own experiences and expressing gratitude for the reminders of courage and compassion. One comment stood out in particular. A woman named Anna wrote, "Your story gave me the push I needed to speak up about an issue at my workplace. I'd been hesitant to say anything, but reading about Liam's bravery made me realize that standing up doesn't have to be scary. It can be empowering." Reading comments like Anna's filled Maria with a profound sense of purpose. She realized that their experience wasn't just personal, it had the potential to inspire others to act with courage and empathy. Encouraged by the response, Maria started a small blog where she continued sharing stories, not just her own but also those of other people who had faced adversity and found ways to overcome it. Over time, the blog grew into a community of individuals committed to fostering positive change in their lives and communities. For Liam, the aftermath of their adventure took a slightly different form. At school, his teachers incorporated elements of his story into lessons about leadership and advocacy. During a class discussion about heroes, one teacher asked, "What makes someone a hero?" Without hesitation, a classmate raised his hand and said, "Being brave enough to do the right thing even when it's hard." Everyone turned to look at Liam, who blushed but smiled proudly. Outside of school, Liam became more confident in using his voice. Whether it was standing up for a friend, being teased on the playground, or suggesting ideas during group projects, he carried himself with a newfound assurance. His classmates noticed the change and often sought his opinion, knowing he would approach situations with fairness and thoughtfulness. Months later, Maria received an email from the airline company inviting her and Liam to attend a special event at the airport. Curious, she accepted the invitation and brought Liam along. When they arrived, they were greeted warmly by Mr. Harris, the CEO, who thanked them once again for bringing attention to the need for change. He then led them to a large gathering area where employees, passengers, and local community members had assembled. To Maria and Liam's astonishment, the centerpiece of the event was a display featuring their story. Photos, quotes, and key moments from their experience were showcased on posters and digital screens throughout the space. There was even a short video montage highlighting the changes implemented at the airport since their initial encounter. Employees shared testimonials about how the new training programs had improved their interactions with passengers, while travelers recounted instances of exceptional service they had received recently. As the crowd applauded, Mr. Harris stepped forward to address everyone. "Today we celebrate not only the progress we've made but also the individuals who inspired it," he said, gesturing toward Maria and Liam. This young man reminded us all that no act of kindness or justice is too small. His courage sparked a movement that continues to shape our organization and beyond. Maria squeezed Liam's hand tightly, overcome with emotion. Though she had always believed in the importance of standing up for what's right, seeing the tangible impact of their actions left her speechless. For Liam, the moment reinforced what he already knew, that doing the right thing mattered, no matter your age or circumstances. After the ceremony, Maria and Liam spent some time touring the updated facilities. Everywhere they went, staff members approached them with smiles, thanking them for inspiring change. One officer even handed Liam a small badge that read, "Junior Advocate for Kindness." Laughing, Liam pinned it to his shirt, promising to wear it proudly. As they prepared to leave, Maria paused near the entrance, taking one last look around. The airport felt like a completely different place now, one defined by warmth, respect, and humanity. Turning to Liam, she said, "You know, champ, you really did change everything." Liam shrugged modestly, though his grin betrayed his pride. "We both did, Mom, together," and she couldn't argue with that. Their journey had been a team effort, one rooted in love, resilience, and the unshakable belief that even the smallest voices can spark monumental change. As they walked away hand in hand, Maria knew that their story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning, a foundation upon which countless others could build their own paths toward justice, kindness, and hope.